deep within the untamed wilds of the northern steppes, far from any known civilization, lies a structure that defies explanation. Designated Site 734, it is a subterranean labyrinth, a maze of polished basalt that spirals deep into the earth. Archaeologists who first stumbled upon it were mesmerized by its pristine condition, untouched by the millennia. But their fascination soon turned to a quiet, creeping dread. The moment they crossed the threshold, something was wrong. Something was missing. Sound. Not just quiet, but a total and absolute absence of it. Every device, from the most sensitive parabolic microphones to simple decibel meters, registered absolute zero. It was as if the very concept of vibration had been erased from this pocket of reality. This wasn't the peaceful silence of a library or the dead calm before a storm. It was a predatory silence, an oppressive void that felt heavy, like a physical weight pressing in from all sides. The air itself seemed thick, refusing to carry a whisper, a footstep, or even the sound of a frantic, hammering heart. The team stood at the entrance to a place where the laws of physics had been suspended, and a profound, unnatural emptiness reigned. The initial report from the lead acoustician, Dr. Aris Thorne, was chilling. He described the silence not as an absence of noise, but as a presence, an active, nullifying force. Normal ambient sound in even the most isolated anechoic chambers on Earth hovers just above the threshold of human hearing, a faint hiss of air molecules in motion. Here, there was nothing. The team's attempts to communicate became a pantomime of mouthing words, their vocal cords vibrating uselessly in their throats. Frustration quickly gave way to unease. Without the subtle, constant auditory feedback we rely on to ground ourselves, the mind begins to falter. This is the domain of profound sensory deprivation. Within hours, the psychological toll became terrifyingly apparent. The first to break was a junior geologist. He began swatting at the air, his face a mask of terror, convinced that insects were crawling on his skin. He couldn't hear them, but he insisted he could feel their phantom buzzing inside his skull. This was the prelude to a cascade of cognitive collapse. The human brain, starved of external auditory stimuli, begins to create its own. This phenomenon, known as the Ganzfeld effect, was amplified to a horrifying degree within Site 734. Team members reported auditory hallucinations, not of clear sounds, but of distorted, fleeting whispers that seemed to skitter at the very edge of perception. They described hearing phantom footsteps just behind them, the rustle of cloth in an empty room, and most disturbingly, the sound of their own thoughts spoken aloud by an unfamiliar voice. Paranoia became rampant. Unable to hear each other, they grew suspicious, interpreting every glance as a threat, every gesture as a sign of betrayal. The line between internal monologue and external reality dissolved. They were trapped in the echo chamber of their own minds, and the echoes were turning monstrous. Dr. Thorne's log entries grew increasingly erratic, detailing his own descent. He wrote of hearing a constant, low hum that no instrument could detect. A sound he believed was the structure itself, breathing. He was losing the ability to trust his own senses, his own mind. The void wasn't just silent. It was consuming them from the inside out. The breakthrough, if it could be called that, came from the anthropological analysis of the site's design. The walls of the inner chamber were not bare. They were covered in intricate, unnerving carvings. These weren't depictions of gods or battles, but abstract patterns and glyphs that seemed to writhe and shift in the periphery of one's vision. Dr. Elara Vance, the team's cultural expert, proposed a terrifying hypothesis. This site wasn't a tomb or a temple. It was a weapon, or perhaps a tool for a purpose far darker. She theorized that the structure was designed for a form of ritualistic mind cleansing, a way to systematically dismantle a person's psyche. The silence was the first stage, designed to isolate the victim within their own consciousness. The symbols were the second, a form of psychoactive visual input meant to guide the fracturing mind toward a specific state. The glyphs, when translated, did not form a language in the traditional sense. but a series of commands or philosophical statements. One recurring phrase, found etched above the central altar, was particularly chilling. It seemed to be the final instruction in this brutal process of mental annihilation. In the oppressive silence, the explorers felt the meaning of the words resonate not in their ears, but directly within their minds. The voices stop here. Only the truth remains. What truth were the creators of this place seeking? Was it enlightenment, or a complete erasure of the self, preparing a vessel for something else? The purpose was clear: to drive a person to the brink of madness, and then push them over the edge. So, what have we learned from the tragedy of Site 734? The initial expedition ended in disaster, with the surviving members requiring extensive psychological rehabilitation. The site itself has since been sealed, deemed too dangerous for further human exploration. Yet, the questions it raised continue to haunt us. Is our fear of silence an innate, primal instinct? We fill our lives with noise, with music, conversation, the constant hum of technology. Is this a subconscious effort to keep the void at bay, to reassure ourselves that we are not alone in our own heads? Site 734 suggests that silence in its purest, most absolute form is not an absence of something, but a horrifying entity in its own right. It is a state of being that strips away the layers of our perceived reality, leaving us naked and vulnerable to the chaos within. The structure remains, a masterpiece of acoustic and psychological warfare, its purpose fulfilled and its mechanism perfectly preserved. It is a patient trap, waiting in the soundless dark for its next visitor. A testament to the horror that can be found not in a deafening scream, but in its absolute, unending absence. The void is still there. And it is waiting.